Well, thank you everybody for coming tonight. My name is Patty Schramm. I'm the Parent Resource Trainer Coordinator for the SALT Talks, also known as the School to Adult Life Transition Series. We touch on topics, every, a couple times a month, not quite every week, but a couple times. And last month, we were talking about guardianship and what happens when we're gone. Well, this month, we're kind of changing direction a little bit, and we're going to be focusing on work hard, play hard. So we're starting off the beginning of the month. We want to look at in the employment team, how to create an employment team, because when your child goes to or thinking about going to employment or into employment, you want to create a good, solid team behind you so it's a successful process. Next week, we have a panel coming on about providers. What is a provider? That was always like when I first heard the word or the term provider, I was like, what is that exactly? Didn't know. And there were so many questions around that, how to interview, how, all about the different providers and, what do they actually do? And then we'll be ending the month with camps, recreation and camps. So that will be kind of a fun little break from all the heavier topics we've been covering. So with that, we're going to get started on tonight's presentation. We're creating my employment network. What does that mean? So we have Keith Banner from DODD, and we have Michelle Garrett from Montgomery County Board of DD presenting on this topic. So I have made you both co-hosts. So I don't, whoever wants to start, please feel free.
You want me to? I'm going to share the screen as Michelle.
Okay. And then
bring up the initial slide deck and
sure.
We can start.
Okay.
Everybody can see that?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
Let me get it going so we can get the whole screen. There we go.
All right, great. Hi, good evening. I'm Michelle Garrett, and this is Keith Banner, and we are going to talk about creating your employment network or your child's employment network. So some of the questions and slides that we're going to go over is the employment team. So how's the employment team developed? How does an employment team help with the child's transition to employment? What roles does each team member play? Who is on the team? What should the parent expect from an employment team? Can members of the team be changed? And who would be the head or main contact of the employment team? Who would the parent contact first with concerns? And then the importance of the employment team can play in their child's success.
And sometimes we're using the word network and sometimes we're using the word team, and they're kind of interchangeables. So, but I wanted to talk real briefly before we go into the slides about giving a little context to kind of establishing a team or a network. It's kind of like the way to think about it, I think, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, Michelle, but I think it's to think about it as if anybody is trying to get a job, what do you need to do? If you're a kid without a disability or your kid with a disability, what are some of the things you need to do to develop an employment team and a network? And with kids with disabilities, it may take some extra supports, but you start with a core of what your son or daughter or brother, sister, what they can do, what they might need help with, what they're excited by, and then what are the conditions for success, and who are the people that you or somebody you know that might help kind of along that journey. And then you merge that with the service system, which we're going to talk about here in a second, and you'll get a bigger kind of bang for your buck, if that makes sense. So just a little bit of a context. So I'm going to move into the next slide, and I think you're going to go with this one.
Yes. So developing my employment team. So in Montgomery County, and I know that we have maybe some people that are not in Montgomery County. So I just wanted to say how Montgomery County works. Each county does things differently. So in Montgomery County, there are two ways to develop your employment team. First, a referral from the ESSA would come to me. So the referral could come from the ESSA, the transition coordinator, or your child may already have an adult SSA. And so the referral would be made to the employment navigator supervisor. And so if your child is still in high school, the team would consist of the ESSA, the School to Work Employment Specialist, which is Andrea Harker, for those of you who know Andrea, an OOD counselor, family members, teachers, and whoever else you may want to have on your team. Maybe a mental health counselor, social worker, whoever, children's service, we're involved with children's services, they may want to be on the team also. So once the child is transitioning from high school, their team is going to consist of an adult SSA, the employment navigator, the OOD counselor, and family members, and of course, whoever else you may want on your team. We do have a benefits coordinator, and her name is Tammy Disney, and I'm sure that some of you have already heard her speak before, and she can join your team for a short period of time to help explain how benefits work when you're working. So the roles that each team member plays. The employment navigator or school to work employment specialist would be the point of contact for the students when dealing with employment. They will coordinate services with OOD and providers when needed. The SSA will work with the EN and the student to make sure the ISP is in place and needed services are identified. The OOD counselor will coordinate pre-employment services, job development, and job coaching services. And the family members should be the natural support system. And the benefits coordinator will help with understanding benefits and work.
I'm going to see if anybody has any questions in the chat or anything, because that was a lot of information.
It was.
Any translation on the, everybody knows what an SSA is, I hope. And if not, we can tell you it's like the case manager. It's the support and service administrator. What's an ESSA stand for? Because in that other slide, I couldn't remember.
Those are the eligibility
Okay.
SSAs for
you.
Students under 22.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that anyone who has a question, you can type it in the chat box. I'll watch the chat box and let you guys know if I see any questions.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Patty.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to move on to the next slide.
Sure. So how does the employment team work with transition? As a student transitions from school to adult life, some team members may change. The student will receive an adult SSA and an employment navigator, and the OOD counselor should stay the same. So if you are a student and you are already involved with OOD, like your junior, senior, super senior years, you will be assigned an OOD counselor, and they should stay with you as you move along. The only time your team's going to change is when you change from having Andrea to an EN and an ESSA to an adult SSA. The team would be networking to help the student become employed by asking the parents about where family members work and where neighbors work. And that's what we do. We do that a lot for ourselves if we're looking for a new job. I mean, people ask all the time, where do you work? I was just somewhere just about an hour ago and with a friend and a new friend, and the new friend said, so where do you work? What do you do? I think people are interested in knowing what you do, and that's a way to network. And so maybe your neighbor is a manager of a grocery store or a manager of a restaurant. Your child wants to work there. It's always good to network and have some places in mind that we could ask if they would be willing to work with your child. And another thing is not just knowing people at family members or neighbors, but making a list of what your child would like to do or where they think that they might want to work at is always a great starting point, especially when we get with a provider who's ready to start looking for employment, because they can start with those places that your child would be interested in working at. We would look at the students' likes and dislikes to find out what type of environment they would like to work in. I am a big advocate that I would like to know where anybody wants to work, whether they're an adult or a student, because we want to make sure that we're trying to find the best place for them to work at. Sometimes that does not work out. They may think that they want to bag groceries, and they may get into that position and It's just not for them. And that's okay, because bagging groceries is not for everybody. But we need to know that so we can start looking for something else and help them to find what they do want, where they do want to work, or what they do like to work at. As an adult, once the employment is obtained, the board can help with long-term employment supports and transportation. So if, say, somebody gets, let's just use right now as an example. So a student has an OOD counselor, they're in the process of getting a job, and then they graduate from high school at the end of May, then we want to encourage you to make sure that you do the adult services paperwork so your child can have an adult SSA. Once OOD has closed their case for working successfully for 90 days, we can find a provider who will provide that long-term retention services and go and check on your student, young adult, to make sure that everything's going okay at work. Because we have found that I may think that I'm doing a great job at work, and my supervisor might think that there are some things that we need to work on and tweak. So when we have those supports in there, it will help to the longevity of their job. And then we can also help with transportation, either with RTA, paratransit, non-medical transportation, or if you would like to transport your child, that's always great also. But that is available once they are an adult.
And that's one of the things that you really need to think about as a team is, I think, before you even start the job searches, how is somebody going to get there? So transportation really is one of the keys to the success, and you need to think about that as they move into employment, like, because it really is like vital to the whole kind of idea. So, and that would help probably too in the job development, right, Michelle? Like if maybe they could walk to work, or maybe it's a short distance and they can get however we can do it. But like always thinking about transportation moving into that job development is a good thing.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. So as Michelle is saying, parents, you guys play a critical part, kind of pulling all this together and kind of paying attention to what your child's employment needs are. And it's important to think about, like I said up top, what anyone looking for a job needs to get a job: a network of friends, professionals, family, and anyone who might help in landing that job. So Michelle kind of focused in on establishing an employment team, right, of the professionals, the school personnel, the opportunities for Ohioans with disabilities counselor, the SSA, the family members. They're going to all kind of be a part of this team that kind of gets together to kind of assess and plan for employment. And and then the provider that you choose, the employment services provider, to help you kind of get assessed and then also develop the employment and the job and land a job, hopefully. But you bring to the table as the family member a lot of information and a lot of resources that you may not think you have, but you really are integral to the success of the whole team, because you really have the knowledge and the history and the relationship, obviously, with your child that can really help all these people that are trying to help your son or daughter, brother, sister land a job. You really are like one of the keys to the success. So think about who you know, like Michelle was saying, how they might be a part of that network, and develop a plan focused on creating that network that also inventories your person's skills, interests, and I like to call them conditions for success. It basically is, where is your son or daughter, family member, brother, sister, where are they at their peak? Like what would it take to find a place where they could really strut their stuff and show off what they're capable of? And that conditions for success is really important to think about as you move into job development. So I'm going to go through a bunch of resources that I put together in the slide deck, and I think Patty has it so you guys can access it. These are all links embedded in the slide deck. But when Michelle was talking about writing things down and bringing it to the team, this Charting the Life course kind of resource helps you do that. I'm going to show you something called an integrated support star, right? It's a one-page document that you can get at that link, and it basically helps you tell the person's story. and you can use it to focus in on employment supports, right? So in this one, they're kind of doing a one for Connor, right? You'd put your son or daughter or family member's name in the center, and you would just kind of inventory their skills and assets, the eligibility specific supports they have that they're involved in, like OOD might be one, schools, but SSI, you'll see on the slide here, all the relationship, who are the people in your family member's life and how can they help? And then you have over here all the community-based supports that they have access to. And then also really important now is technology. So if you kind of like start with this idea of inventorying all this great stuff about them, all the resources they already have before they go to the service system to get help, it really will help have a conversation that starts the conversation on like knowing the person and knowing what their needs are and what they have access to. And this is another charting the life course tool that you can get at this link. It's called a life trajectory. What Michelle's talking about these employment teams that you're going to be a part of, you want to be able to have a vision of what you want and what your kid wants to accomplish employment-wise. And this kind of one-sheeter, it's a PDF, fillable PDF, kind of helps you kind of have a vision of what kind of job the person would want, like, and then also what they don't like. And then you can move back and go into things I would like my family member to work on to move toward that goal. You can start this at any age, right? This one is started at age 13, but if you start with a vision of if they start with a vision of what they want to do for a job and you list it out, it really helps the employment team kind of figure out what the best first or second moves will be. And then also what's just as important is knowing what the person doesn't like, right? So they don't, in this one, they know employment or shelter workshop, all this stuff is kind of already written down so that you guys as a family unit can go to the employment team kind of to let them know exactly what you're thinking. And it kind of kick starts the process and brings it back down to, we're trying to figure out what this person's interested in doing for a job and the conditions for that success and maybe the help they need to be successful. Now I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to go to a website. I always get lost on this stuff, so hopefully I'll be okay. Let me see. It's like chewing gum and walking. Yeah, this is the Employment First website here. And we can put the link in the chat. It's also on the slides. And it's just a really bunch of great resources. But here is a really great place to start thinking about building that employment team while they're still in school. It's a transition toolkit with all kinds of really cool resources, modules to look at, to kind of walk you through. And I wanted to bring up this the vocational planning tool, which is again kind of like what Michelle was saying, is we need to write down and figure out a vocational kind of profile for a person. And this kind of is one tool on the Employment First website that you could use that basically just is a checklist of all the assessed needs. And you can use this to kind of explain and show people and develop this kind of, again, there's that word, conditions for success, just to explain to the employment team that you guys have established exactly what the needs are, right? And exactly what the person wants to accomplish. So I wanted to show that. And again, that's in the link in the slide deck and also on the website. Do we got any questions? I feel like I'm talking a lot and I want to slow down.
I don't see anything out there just yet.
Great, thank you. So also I wanted to show you something on this website that's really cool too, if I can get back to it. It's a job seeker's guide. And it has a lot of resources around developing that employment team, explains what Employment First is, what kind of a job should I get, who can help. And then you can link to that, and it just walks you the best team for the job. And it can walk you through developing that team, and kind of did what Michelle did for us at the top in the slides, and also gives you explanations of what a vocational rehabilitation counselor is, which is an opportunities for Ohioans with disabilities counselor. It walks you through what a service and support administrator is. So it's really cool the way it kind of gives you what the employment professional should do, the types of employment professionals. A lot of times we call them job developers, to help the person, that your family member, that they would be the kind of the provider that would help you kind of figure out what jobs you want to do, and then they'd walk you through the interview process and kind of land in the job, and then it goes over to a job coach, kind of like the way Michelle was talking about the employment team. Then this will tell you what a vocational rehabilitation counselor is, and it kind of also gives you a bunch of information around a guide to transition services here, and then it kind of gives you the explanation of an SSA. So all of this is in just one space on the Employment First website, and it really is a pretty easy walkthrough, and it kind of is all the information in one place, which kind of makes you feel a little better about, getting to know all the stuff that you need to know. And it also is directed at the students themselves, and where do they start, and how does my work impact my benefits, which something Michelle was doing. There's even one about how can technology help me. So all that's under the Employment First website under the Job Seekers Guide. So I wanted to make sure I showed you that. I'm going to go back to the slides now. So I'll stop the share again, and I'll go back to the slide deck. So that's all at that link. And I'll also send out the specific links that I showed you, just in case you can't find them, because sometimes it gets kind of confusing. But again, that's a great place to start for transition. And then also that Job Seekers Guide really walks you through the kind of stuff that Michelle was talking about developing an employment team. So this is something that is on the Ocali website, which is what we're talking about, Michelle and I, about writing it down and communicating what your son or daughter, brother, sister, whoever, your family member, what they're capable of doing, right? And so discovery is like a concept of kind of allowing the time that you spend with your family member, kind of almost hanging out with them with intention to see what they're capable of, and then jotting it down. Like, can they take out the garbage without without a lot of help? Can they use their phone, their technology without a lot of, everything that's about living, all the skills that they have that that can really kind of be translated into work, right? Into skills that can be you can tell an employer they have. So this discovery process is just basically, and you can do it as a family member, and also there's a discovery service that sometimes you can access to do this for you. But it's basically to help figure out just through kind of watching and viewing what your kids is capable of doing, and jotting it down, so that when you're at that employment team meeting, you can say, this is all they can do. They can, they can count money. They pick up after themselves without being told. They can do the laundry. All these skills that they're building in your house, in your home, take that to the team and say, these are things that I think could be translated into, employment. And this website on Ocali kind of walks you through a process as a family member that you could do that with. And this is a self-guided discovery from the Lead Center, which is another version of what I'm talking about, where this would help your son or daughter, family member, whoever, kind of do it on their own, communicate what they can do, and kind of be self-conscious about all the skills they're building as they, become an adult. And that really is one of the keys to the conditions for success for employment. Is, I think a lot of times people think that they're not employable, that they don't have any skills, but they're making their own bed, they're cleaning their own bathroom, they're doing all kinds of things at home that could be translated into, work. So that's another link that you could check out if you're interested. And then on the Employment First website where I was just before, this is another discovery guide around a process to kind of, again, see what they're capable of. And then, like I mentioned a couple of slides back, how do you communicate to the employment team when they're at their best, when they really feel like they're capable and they're in control? Is it when they're like at if they're at a bowling league and they hit a strike, or if they're at a high school football game and they're really cheering? Like, when are they at their peak of just being in the moment? And that might be a place where we could move that into, maybe that's where they want to work. Maybe that's a job. So again, it's trying to figure out from real life how we can translate that into job material. I put in here too this link to Ohio Means Jobs, which is the kind of the workforce development website that anybody can access that's looking for work. On this, you can help students build backpacks around all the kind of different kinds of jobs they might want to investigate. There are videos that show you what the jobs are, and you can build this kind of backpack that can kind of communicate their interest to people. And it also is a way for them to kind of get to know what kind of different jobs are out there that they might not be able to experience outside of, Ohio Means Jobs. This is, we talked about this, of having a benefits kind of counselor on the team to kind of help walk through work incentives if your son or daughter or have access to SSI or Medicaid. And this is a website that you can start with, that Ohio DB 101, and it can do a benefits and work estimator. You can go on there and put in, the amount of the SSI, and then you can also say, well, what if he were to work 20 hours at minimum wage, and it'll calculate what that would look like. And also there's a lot of videos and tutorials on here about the work incentives that are involved in SSI and SSDI. So again, this is just the beginning of that conversation. You can use this to kind of walk through and learn, but having like a benefits kind of counselor or benefits educator involved in your employment team is pretty key to making sure you get what you need. I walked you through a little bit of the job seekers guide. This is just the link to that place that kind of showed you what an employment team is and can do. This is, we keep talking about this one, Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities. This is their kind of like public facing website that you can go on as a family member and just get to know what OOD is about. This is a 1, 2, 3 kind of tutorial, and actually you can actually refer yourself, or they can refer themselves, but you go on, you explore what vocational rehabilitation is, and then you can take a self-assessment and then create a profile and actually apply for the service. But this kind of walks you through all the how Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities works. And then this is a website that we run in at DODD. I wonder if it'll take me there. Nope. Sorry, I'll go. Of course it didn't. I want to see if I can get there to show it to you.
We were able to share it into the chat box too.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
If you see the chat box, I think you can click on it there and it will pull up. But you may have to share your screen though.
Is it not sharing? Okay.
It's sharing at the presentation. You might have to do a.
I'm having trouble getting on the website, so I won't be able to show you that one, but I'll send the link in. I think it's having like just server errors. Sorry, y'all. But I'm going to stop. I'll stop sharing and go back to the PowerPoint. For some reason, I can't get on any of the DODD stuff, so I will definitely make sure you got the link so you can investigate on your own. Sorry about that. And that really winds up my portion of the show. I wanted to leave time. We wanted to leave time, of course, to walk through, any situations, any questions you have. So I'm going to, again, stop sharing and maybe just bring up the video. Do y'all have any kind of, oh, good. There's a lot of links and stuff in here. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, we've been trying to share them as we went. The only one I think we had trouble with was which one was it, Michelle? The one you had with Griffin and the one that says self-guided discovery facilitators guide. I think that one.
Okay, I'll make sure I get you the right link. It might have changed because I did this one about 6 months ago. So I'll check into that and send it to you. I wrote a note for it.
And there is a question. All questions are good. So it says they were wondering if this is the right question for the meeting, but how would I start the process of applying for social disability for my son? And would it be SSI or SSDI?
SSDI is work history related. So SSI is disability based, so supplemental social security based on income. So I think if you want to, you might want to go to that DB 101 link that I showed you, and it walks you through with definitions and everything and kind of would tell you more. And then you might want to also check in if you have an SSA too, to check in with them to get better direction. Because I think, but if you start with DB 101 and get some of the basics, you'll be able to kind of have a better conversation with, whoever your case manager is or SSA is.
And I think that just it was mentioned the benefit analysis person. So it would be and I see how would we get an SSA? So we're looking at the county boards, and I know there's a couple county boards on here. If you have a benefit analysis person, contact information, feel free to put it in the chat. But you would contact your county board and go through the eligibility process, but I'll let you address that. If they need to get an SSA, Keith or Michelle.
You want to start, Michelle? I'm sorry.
Sure. If they're already involved with Montgomery County DD and they have an ESSA, to get an adult SSA, they would need to complete the adult services paperwork, which is sent out, I think, the spring and fall of their senior year. Or you could call Ginger at any time and ask Ginger to send the adult services paperwork out for your child.
So
that answer the
each county has a different way. You want to make sure that they're eligible, right? So you talk to you'd go to the county board for eligibility to get that taken care of. And then once you're eligible, deemed eligible for county board services, then you get assigned an SSA that would support you to kind of, do what you need to do. So, but the beginning of the whole conversation, if you haven't started with the county board, is the eligibility part of it. So
Keith and Michelle and Patty, this is Andrea Harker.
Hey,
what
Andrea.
I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and type in Montgomery County Board of DDS's website.
Perfect.
There are several links on there about answering questions in regards to seeking eligibility and probably some of the things you guys have talked about. So Patty, do you want me to look up also Warren County and Greene County's websites as well and post them in the chat?
Yeah, if you want to go ahead. I was just asking any county boards that are on, if they can post in the chat box the eligibility contact or your website link or a benefit analysis. But if you want to put those in, that would be great for those counties.
Thank you, Andrea.
Sure, I will. You're welcome.
Is there anybody from OOD on, from Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities on tonight? You're going to have that next week with Dave Sullivan and the providers, right, Patty? So, but OOD, I just wanted to mention, they have access to benefits counselors as well. And so that might be one route to take. And then they're also through legal aid, you can access, anybody can access, there's a waiting list usually, but sometimes county boards, like Patty was saying, have in-house work incentives counselors as well. So you'd have to check with each county board to see who does that function for them. one thing we do, and it's on the Employment First website, we do a series called Fear Factor that we're going to do one in April, where we walk through with benefits counselors on the actual webinar all the fears people have about benefits and working. So, and I'm going to put in the chat, there's a link to all the recorded webinars for that series. We've gone through Medicaid, we've gone through SSI, SSDI, and it's been 6 webinars since a year and a half ago that if you're interested, you could go and check that out. And there's some supporting material there too. So I'm going to put that in the chat real quick.
And I just want to comment for parents and that are on here. One thing, as your child is coming up through, you know, the older they get, things change. So just for instance, our son had gone through some of the eligibility testing and stuff, and he had a terrible time with counting change. That was one. So then later, when he was working, he wanted to run register. He had worked at Best Buy for a while and wanted to work the register. And we're like, well, he had trouble counting change. We were like unsure about all that, you know, so we hesitated. We weren't sure to encourage him or not to, you know, we weren't sure which way to go. When he ended up getting trained on register, and he works it wonderfully. He's perfect. You know, he does fine with register. So it's like, you know, they could change. If there's something they want to do. I mean, the job coaches, you know, the employment job coaches, you know, they can work with them along those lines too. So I just encourage, you know, things change as time, just to let you know, it does change.
That's a
as they
great
get
point.
older.
That's a totally great point, because
Yes.
sometimes we don't see that in them because we live with them their whole life. You know, we don't see them how they change, but they do. And once they get out of the house, sometimes just the different environment. We were talking about this before we got on. It's just the different environment. They want to show off sometimes when in the house they don't want to. And so, like, how do you make sure that that's a part of the conversation and getting that forward is they can change and they can learn. And sometimes it's just giving them the expectation that that's what we're expecting of them really does help.
There
There's
was a question in the chat about when to reach out for an adult SSA. So yes, definitely spring or winter before your child is ready to graduate. If you're in Montgomery County and you're already involved with BD services, once your child reaches the age of 18, they should be assigned to work with the transition coordinator. So you could reach out to her or Andrea also to see when to start filling out that paperwork for adult SSA. But I would definitely say, definitely winter, no later than spring before they graduate.
You got it, Tiffany. Technology can also assist in ways we don't always know with regard to job skills. Totally true. Just having access to kind of like, there's all kinds of online ways to do vocational profiles and to be able to communicate out and to learn about different jobs. And then also just on the job site itself, sometimes having apps and things to kind of walk you through and keep you on track. So yeah, definitely technology is something we're always trying to make sure is a part of the conversation.
And just on that, in April, we have, and I think I worked through Keith on this, is getting the DODD, the technology, assistive technology, liaisons or ambassadors, I guess is the proper name.
Oh, cool. They're great. Oh,
They're going to be talking in April.
Great. They're the best.
It's just April, we're kind of going with the I'm stuck, what do I do next kind of theme. So hopefully, yeah, some of that will answer some questions too regarding technology, but we have some stuff in the live binder about technology as well.
I think there was a comment in the chat that said that they have someone working at Walmart as a personal shopper who can't read.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
Yes.
Hey, Tiffany, can you unmute? I want to ask you a question. Right back
Yeah.
at you. Are you
Yeah,
there?
can you hear me? Yeah, can you hear me?
So yeah, I can hear you. Like, how did that happen?
He started out doing cards, but they the system Walmart has in place for their personal shoppers, you don't have to be able to read. So it's funny because it's a accommodation, but it's an accommodation that every personal shopper at Walmart has access to. So they have a little like scanner app, and it tells them the aisle, and it shows them a picture, and it tells them, you know, there's numbers and letters on the aisle. So you just go through the grid, find where it is, and then match the picture. So yeah, and that's what I mean, technology, like, you know, just because you can't do something doesn't mean you can't do that job. You can find ways around a lot of things.
You know what, like, we're working on a presentation for the APSI conference that's coming up in Columbus
Mhm.
in June, and we're trying to find stories like this. So I may reach out to you to pick your brain on this one, because that's a great example of just tech that's available to anybody, but it can help people that we support kind of be successful. That's wonderful. So thank you for telling that story.
You're welcome. I'm on the APSI Ohio board, so
So you know, okay, good. I didn't know. So there you go. Tell Jan and about this, and we'll maybe include you in that. We're doing a panel on I think it's on the 13th. But anyway,
Okay.
I'll shut up. But thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, it's a great story because he was there long term and wanted to advance. And that was a way. And again, and it's not special. He doesn't have to, have something special brought in and all this work. It's available to everyone.
That's just a great story.
So I want to try to, parents, I know, like with an employment team, do you have any like questions, like specifically like when you're creating this team? Like, so Keith, I'm a parent. I go to the county board. Go through the eligibility process. We find our child is eligible for county board of DD services, and they are, we'll just say a junior or senior. Probably we'll go with senior since we're late getting started. And then so with the county board, we go through the eligibility. We get assigned a transition coordinator. Okay, so then from there, how is this team actually created? Like, who brings the team together? Like, for the parent that's brand new to all this.
Michelle's do you want to start, Michelle, and then I'll fill in the gaps?
Sure. So if you just come in senior year, you get a transition coordinator. You tell the transition coordinator, my son or daughter would like to work. So the transition coordinator is going to make a referral to me. And then I'm going to assign either Andrea, who is our school to work transition specialist, or an EN. And sometimes I'll assign both, especially if they're going to graduate at the end of the school year. And then Andrea is going to work with, or either the EN or Andrea is going to work with the school to see, has the school already made the referral to Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities, or do we need to make the referral? So then we're going to make a referral to OOD, or the school's going to make a referral to OOD. We're going to get through that whole intake process with them, and they're going to assign a counselor. And then once the counselor's assigned, so now your team is your parent, your teacher, Andrea, transition coordinator if they can attend meetings, your OOD counselor. And then once you get through that intake process, they make you eligible with OOD. Then we're going to pick a provider to do job development, or maybe we need to do some pre-ets, some pre-employment stuff, maybe summer camp, like a work camp in the summer, or maybe we need to do a community-based assessment, which is a 2-week job trial that, I want to stock groceries at, I want to stock at Big Lots. So they could do a job tryout at Big Lots. They would get paid for that time. And then that would give them some idea, okay, yes, the person can do this job, or what are some other things that we might need to work on? Maybe social skills, maybe their attendance wasn't great, or advocating for themselves, things like that they can figure out through a community-based assessment, or the person might just be ready to go straight into job development. So then you would pick a provider, and then they would help your child find employment. The job developer would help find employment. And it's more, we definitely want the parents and the student to have intake, buy-in, input during this whole process. Because if I just have a job developer that goes out and gets me a job, and I have had no input or any buy-in, it's gonna be a tough sell, but we definitely need that input and buy-in from the student and the parent.
And so each county has a different way of doing it, but that's a good kind of model. But what happens usually is the SSA or the EN, the case managers, it basically that's connected to the board of DD, kind of convenes the initial kind of planning meeting. So that's where the employment team really needs to come together, right? Because you're planning for the future. And so basically the SSA will kind of help bring that together and kind of start with the OOD referral, with building the team to, making sure the family's a part of it, making sure that if there's a teacher or intervention specialist involved, they will help pull that together. But the really good SSAs, and there are a lot of really great ones, are going to be the kind of partners with the family, right? They're going to hook up with you guys to kind of get your take on it and see what kind of team you want to pull together, right? Who else do we need to have involved, either through, virtually or in person, to kind of get the information we need to make the right moves toward, employment. There's a question. What if your child is already working with OOD while they're in school and with a different provider through their school years? Do they end up with Montgomery County DDS when they become an adult, or stay with the provider they had through school? You want to get that one, Michelle, or?
Sure. So they're already with OOD, then they're going to get an adult SSA. If they want to stay with the provider, by all means, yes, they can stay with that provider to do long-term follow along, long-term services for them. They would probably, when they get the adult SSA, when they're ready to transition from school to adulthood, we would probably also assign an employment navigator, just to make sure that everything is in place with that provider, that the funding source is good, you don't need transportation, just little housekeeping things that we would need to take care of. But yes, you can definitely stay with that provider for long-term services. Does that answer the question?
See if she says, if Shauna,
Okay.
if you have more, yes,
Okay,
thank
yeah.
you. She said,
And I
cool.
was going to say, a lot of times when you pick a provider for development and coaching, that's who the person wants to stay with for long-term retention, just because you have built that rapport with them and they know your child and they know the employer.
Now I have one input too, and I know this doesn't maybe apply to every county, but so let's say our child is in project or is coming up and has they're trying out or have gotten into maybe a project life or search program. So this employment navigation team, what does that look like when you add like the extended part for the project life and search?
Do you want me to tell you how we do that here?
Yeah, that'd be good.
Okay, so if your student is in project life or project search, I'm sorry, my dog has decided that it's time to play. Andrea would be involved with them until that spring-ish time. Andrea would still stay involved, and then we would get an employment navigator involved to attend the meetings. And project search would already have a provider in place who would provide the development and coaching. And I'm not quite sure. I think project life is the same way, that they will get OOD involved and have a developer and coach to help them find a job. And then we would just pick up wherever they're at in that whole process. The EN would just come alongside and help with whatever needs to be taken care of.
What's good about the project life and project search is the kids themselves kind of convene the meeting, right? They kind of, they kind of are the ones that are building the team, and that's a part of the programming, which I think is really cool, because that employment team they build it from the ground up, and they already have a really good structure in place to kind of do monthly meetings. I think they come out and then they do the job rotations. And so I think it's a really good structure for looking at how to build an employment team, because they really just do it, right? They do it while they're still in those programs, and then they can kind of use that team to move out from the program into, you know, a job. So.
And this becomes all part of their IEP in their school, in the school system, since they're still in school.
Yep. And in Butler County, where I used to work, where I hung out, we there would always be an SSA involved in those monthly meetings, or an employment navigator to either, sometimes they're interchangeable, but, and basically it would be, you'd go month to monthly meetings together and just get updates on what job rotations they've had. And then eventually you say, we come to the conclusion it's time to hit it, because they've gone through all these rotations and they're ready to go. And so you already have an attachment to OOD, right, to kind of move into job development. So it really does make the employment team kind of a sane kind of structure.
Yeah, our son went through, well, Keith was there, part of the project life, and then project search. And like he said, we had meetings every month, and they had a little bit of everybody around while he was in school. We had OOD, Opportunities for Hines with Disabilities, the county board, we would attend, and whoever else. But it was very informative and very helpful. So it's something you can start while they're in school. Let's see, I think there is another question out there. There was one here. It says, I think as a parent, it can be very confusing when OOD comes in, and when they have Montgomery County Board of DD comes in, and when they partner together. And I think the confusion, I don't know, and you'll have to so the confusing part is who is who. I know for me as a parent, it was like, okay, all these groups, now who is actually who? I'm not sure if that's where you're going with that question, Inez, but that's what came to mind.
I think I'm gonna clarify what I mean is that, you know, especially on the transition part, what is it that, okay, we hook up with OD at 14, and then we reach, you know, a certain age where prior graduation we get you know, an adult SSA, and we might get an EN, and from Montgomery County of Disability, and then where does OD, what is the OD role after, you know, they're gone? And I think maybe there are some overlapping pieces here that we just don't know. It's just gonna happen when it happens. But as I'm standing now and my son is 15, it is a little confusing. I mean, this is actually the first presentation. Thank you guys for doing this, because it's so important for us to very early on to understand the roles as a parent. If we're going to be part of the team, we need not to be confused. We need to be very clear of who is what and who is who. So I'm maybe just my, you know, my opinion, but I do find it a little confusing. That's all.
It can be confusing, but maybe one way to look at it is OOD is time limited, where once you get staff from DDS, we're gonna walk alongside you from whatever point in time we come in until whatever point in time you say, see you later, we don't want you, you're driving me crazy, get out of my life. I mean, we're just here to help you with whatever needs to be helped with transportation. Sometimes even though you have a provider, maybe the provider, you have a better relationship with your DD staff, your son or daughter's having issues at work, and you just feel more comfortable calling up the DD staff and saying, hey, you know, Jimmy's really struggling, he needs a job coach. We can coordinate all those services for you or for your son or daughter to go in and help with, like, just little things. Sometimes people just need little things tweaked in their job, and that's what we're here for, is to help. And then of course your SSA at the county board can do so much more for your child, like living arrangements or transportation, anything that you might need. Keith, do you want to add?
Hey, Inez, there's something I'm going to show real quick that might be helpful. I don't know if it will be or not, but we'll see. That because it is very confusing. I understand that completely. I'm going to share this little doc that that's on the, and I'll put the actual doc in the chat. But it's basically a real simple My Employment Team kind of sheet with all these roles, right? The counselor would be the OOD counselor, and then you can add to it or subtract to it. And then it has name, and then what date of just a way for you to organize the team and what they do. And you don't have to use this, of course, but that might help. Just kind of, just as a team, you could say, what do you do? Like, what are you doing for him? And you could almost write it down. And I think that would help the team itself kind of figure it out too. So I'll put that doc in the chat for you. And you don't have to use it, obviously, but it's just another way to kind of organize stuff.
I think it's great. Thank you so much. Even the links that you gave, I've been looking at Ohio employment first for a long time, and you showed me some things there I never seen it before. So it's really amazing that those presentations can pinpoint some things that you never seen, you never came across. And it's so nice to be organized, especially for us that are looking at transition to employment right now, and just getting ready and getting all the information. So I really appreciate you taking the time and in a very organized manner that we can take the time and look at those links. And so send it to me, whatever you have.
Yeah. And if you have any questions, you can also reach out to me if you want to. I'll put my email in the chat too, just in case you want. And of course, Michelle's the best too. So, but anyway,
Thank you so much.
Email. Yeah, for sure.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
Do adults who are unable to work without a mentor or someone aiding them eligible to work in the community? That's from Shauna. I like to take that one person at a time, because like Patty said, you don't know what you don't know. And there are ways to support people in employment that we have to figure out. So first things first is just, let's understand the conditions of success. Let's understand what they want to do, what the help they actually need, and kind of shake it out that way. So I want to think of it as, I think everybody, if they want to work, should be able to we should be able to align the supports to help them work, right? That's really what this is about. So it's just going to be dependent on like each person and what they need and what they can bring to the table. So I know that's not a solid, great answer, but I think anybody should be able to work, and we should be able to figure it out as an employment team and as a system. How's that?
And I think Michelle or Keith, you can kind of, with our experience with employment, I mean, OOD or their provider, whoever was working with, they stuck by you until you got to know the job or got comfortable. But I tell you, some of these employment agents, or where they're working, places of work, I mean, you get another team around you there too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes.
That's a great way to put it, is the employment team on the side of all the stuff we're talking about. But then once you get a job, there's an employment team there. There's a team of people that you work with that, and we call it natural supports in the system-y way, but it's basically, how you feel when you have people that have your back at work. And that's basically what we want to do when we help somebody get a job. We want them to be connected to that network that's in their job. And that's one of the jobs of a job coach and a job developer, really, is to help them figure out how they fit into this culture. And maybe they can get supported in ways that aren't about the system, but about actually just coworkers and peers. And that's really how anybody stays on a job, is by developing relationships with coworkers and kind of basically becoming a part of a network within that job.
And the employment I mean, you would be working together as a team, but like Post-it notes, our son really relied on Post-it notes. If he asked a question and got an answer, he was at a computer during Project Search, he would put the Post-it notes around his computer screen. So he didn't have to ask that question a second time. He would do stuff like that, but people would just have backed him up in the employment world, just his co-workers and stuff so well. And I've seen it several times with other ones too.
And this is Shauna. I'm just typing and it just is easier to get on here.
Yeah,
than it is.
thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, my reason that what that came from is that OOD made it very clear that they do not stay with the individual. They assess after 3 months and then they see where they're at and what supports they still may need. But it was pretty clear that they don't continue to stay with the individual. That's why I actually put it off. My son's 16 and I had looked into it the year before. And when I heard that, I thought, well, this isn't for him, because I just, at this point in time, what I know of him, and I know that things can change and skills can be learned, when he's ready to get into the workforce. But right now, if you were to put him into a building and say, go at it, after training, even after training, there's no way. Like his distractions, the impulse of, just, it wouldn't allow him to stay on task unless somebody was right there with him, helping him. And so I guess that's where I was coming from, is based on what I know of my son right now. And if that's the way that we continue to go, I just wondered if there was, if that's even a possibility, for someone that needs that much support to even be in the workforce. Because I understand, like Walmart, they'll have, coworkers and stuff like that, but there is a limit, right? Like there's a limit to that employers are only going to, do and offer so much. So that's where that was.
I totally understand. And I think that's why I keep leaning into, let's figure out what is capable of, and then also what he needs, or is he, right? It's not a she, he, your son, and kind of, he's 16. So you're at a good point to kind of get assessment and get some, maybe he can't have a job now, but I think you kind of keep working on figuring out where his conditions of success are and where he might be capable eventually as he moves through, transition. Just, you're keeping your eye out for the possibility that he might learn and with the right kind of job carve or job development, there might be a possibility. So that would be why you'd want to have a really strong connection to that employment team, right? Is to figure that out.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. And I mean, I want to have so much hope and faith that he'll be able to, because right now he's showing an interest in facing things, or if he finds things out of order in a store, he'll be behind me and he'll be picking things up and putting them where they belong. And I'm like, this is awesome. This is
Why can't you do that when you for a
right?
job?
Exactly. Yeah. Like, right. So I'm hopeful that skill, that we'll be able, but
I think you're in a good place because you're thinking about it, and he's 16. I mean, I think that's, you're far along than a lot of other people. So I think that's a great thing that you're focused in on trying to figure it out, because he's going to grow, right? And he's going to learn. So
great. Well, thank you. I'm
for sure.
And
thankful.
Brittany just put in this chat that said, check with your school to see if they have a work study program. So I'm not sure what district you're in, but do they have any?
We have actually a pretty wonderful, we're in Centerville. So we have a pretty wonderful, we have a work lab and they have a work study, and, they're trying to get them out in the community and stuff. So we have a great, just in the school, aside from the after 18 program that we have. So I'm grateful for that. So we're working on it, and this summer will be our first year with OOD through the school, and working that transition thing. So,
okay, great.
I'm hopeful.
Okay.
So we're getting connected, we're getting plugged in finally, but it just still in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, okay, when he's 22 and we're out there, what's it going to look like? So it's always that prediction. You try not to look too far ahead, but it makes you wonder. So thank you though.
Thank you for telling us your story.
Yes.
And I think Keith or Michelle, you can also verify me on this one, but we'll be having, like Keith mentioned, we'll be having OOD, a couple times. Next week is providers. We're talking about providers, but then at the end of the month, we have camps. We're having OOD back to talk about that. And then next month is a transition team, and we'll have OOD there as well. But I'm thinking that from what I understand from my conversations with them, if they're working or trying to get them into the workforce and it doesn't work out, even though they close your case now, you can reopen it at any point for later down. I mean, maybe it's not, the time is not right now, but in a year or two, it's not like the door is shut forever.
And then also they OOD and the way they blend and braid supports with each county board is different, and the extended services that the county board can kind of offer too. I mean, it's a conversation for each person and what they need and how do you meet that need through planning, and so all that comes together, especially around employment, because it really is something where you have to have a team of people to make it happen, even if you're not labeled. You need a team. So I think it's even more important to establish that team, like Shauna is doing it when your kid's really young and kind of learning and moving forward. So.
And I think Andrea can probably input on that with the career exploration camps, or any kind of those kind of camps that are offered over the summers, whether it's OOD or one of the county boards, if they have a career exploration, just gives that exposure to working in a small group or in a part, just for a short time.
Yes, Patty, thank you for that introduction. I'm going to be rolling out my summer career exploration camp material starting early next week. And anybody that is listening in is interested in your son or daughter who would love to attend camp. I know we have Kathy Dool on this current recording, and her son Hunter came to camp many years. And I know that Inez's son has also been a part of camp. So we're going to be doing a lot of fun things where we are talking about transportation. I just secured OOD counselors to come and have lunch with us on Fridays. And then we're going to be talking a little bit about Tartan's Tops, the Sinclair College program. We're also going to be doing some volunteer work in a local church in downtown Dayton. But please feel free, anybody on this call, to reach out to me about camp, and I will be pushing the material out next week. And another plug, please join in our summer camp SALT series at the end of this month, where all of the counties will be passing along information.
Thank you, Andrea. Does anybody have any other questions involving employment team? Is there any confusion with the different groups that are involved with, who's on your team? I know it does take a little bit to sort through because I was there. When we were going through eligibility, I just remember they would just say, go to this address to get eligibility. And we were like, okay, now where are we going? We didn't know. It was so many different groups that we got confused between OOD and DD and, just the different groups. So if you're confused, don't worry, I was there too. I'm just looking, is there any other questions at all? Please feel free to jump in here.
I'm just gonna make a comment. Something that helped me a lot with my journey here in Ohio, because I'm a military wife. As you know, every time we move, we have to learn how the system is in every state we move. but I somehow got across, I think it's called backwards planning. It's like a little chart that that a lot of people use, but we parents don't know until we kind of search, things. So that really kind of helped just to uh, have an idea, like time wise, when you can, join things, like, OD starting at 14, and Montgomery kind of disabilities are forever thing, but especially for transition as a parent, I think that backward planning is so helpful. I don't know if other parents out there know about it. I mean, for me, it gave a lot of structure to just know, when to, reach out to people. So I just wanted to make this comment because maybe it is something that you guys could include in your in your presentation, because it did help me a lot, just to have that, not only the team, but to know when to reach out for this team in which stage you do. Yes.
That's
I
a great
promise I'll
thing.
have no more questions.
No,
I'll have no more questions.
that charting the life course thing that I showed up top is exactly that backwards. There's all kinds of versions of it, right? Like the backwards planning, you start with the way you want things to look, and then you back into it, and then you develop a timeline that helps you move forward. So any way you guys can do that, whether it's charting the life course or just whatever, that's really the key to understanding when things are sequenced, when things go, and then also who you need, so I think you're right on the money. So any kind of thinking of what you want to happen, and then moving into the people and the timeline that you need to establish to make it happen, it makes you feel relieved. And I think that's a whole team kind of relief, not just the family, but the SSA, the OOD, everybody would benefit from just having that kind of simple, backwards planning timeline. Really makes it successful for everybody. So definitely.
Yes. Thank you so much. I will share your presentation to a lot of parents, because I'm a job coach myself. So I think there's, I think it's so much information out there. And as a parent, you just don't know where to go, and I think just what you guys did tonight, it can really help a parent just to have few websites that they can go, instead of, like, because the internet has so much stuff, it can get more confusing, because sometimes in this case more is not better. It's just not bad. It's just, especially if you are in the state of Ohio, where to go, what are the resources that we have here especially for military families. I'm kind of partial because I'm a military family, so we come here for 4 years. And if it is not digested in a way that we can just go in, get the information, get resources, and then we get out of the state, it makes our life so much easier. So thank you. I'll pass it on, your information. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Inez. We did put a link in there. We have a backwards planning tab in our live binder. Several resources. And I'm not on, in there right now, but there was, Keith, did Employment First have a backwards planning section?
Yeah.
It was you guys.
I'll put it in the chat. There's a whole bunch of backward planning tools in that, and I'll put that link in the chat now.
I'm thinking O'Callaghan also had one, possibly. But I try to include everything I can. So if we don't have the link, I'll put it in the live binder. But we've had a couple presentations over the years on backwards planning. Many of you that are on tonight maybe didn't hear it because it was a couple years ago, but that is very helpful. Is there any other questions or anything that a little confusing for you? Feel free to ask. This is the time to ask to help get you, help you get through that confusion. Or
this one I'm putting up, backwards planning, it's by O'Callaghan, actually on the EF website, and it's got a video that goes with it that's like 5 minutes that walks you through it. So I'm going to put that link now.
Great. Thank you, Keith.
Sure.
All right. Well, we're pretty much winding down. If there's any more questions or anybody have any more questions, I think your teams are very vital with all the experiences I've been with our experiences, the teams, I mean, they were my, resource, because if you got, why is this happening? Or your son or daughter, say they're interested in doing this or that, you can talk to this team to help, like Keith and Michelle said, help sort it out. Maybe there's something out there on Ohio Means Jobs, or somewhere that they can do a video. There's a video, or some sort of career kind of, like there was one instance I remember years ago, some parents were saying their child, all they want to do was work with animals in a vet setting, in a veterinarian. So they watched the video, I think it was on Ohio Means Jobs, and they decided maybe it wasn't quite for them. When they saw everything that was involved, or maybe they worked at an animal shelter, and they were cleaning up after the animals. That wasn't quite what they, so it's all, it's all a matter of trying things out, but the team is where it will help you a lot get to those successes. Right now we're talking about an employment team. Next month, we're talking about your transition team, and how they work, how they work for you, in all these aspects of as your child transitions, whether it's be just to adulthood, to employment, to post-secondary, and whatever it is. And they just all work together so well. I guess we'll go ahead. If there's no more questions, we're going to wind it down. We did post a link out there for our survey. We posted it at the beginning, but in case you weren't on, we're just taking an input for next year, just trying to get an idea where you're at and what you like and what you don't like. There's some questions just to check a box, and then there's some places where you can put some input, like on topics that you like, but we always look at these things. We meet at the end of the year and go over it, and then try to plan for next year. So your input is very valuable. And just again, next week, we're going to be having a providers panel. So I think that will help back up what you learned tonight, a little bit of with the employment team. And then we have the provider panel. What are they? That was one of those words that were kind of like, I was confused about, a provider and waivers. I think those two words kind of threw me quite a bit during my early stages. So, hopefully, we'll be able to get you to meet and hear a little bit more about providers next week. So I guess with that, I want to I'm going to close the recording real quick here, but I want to thank you for Michelle and Keith for your presentation and for answering all of our questions tonight. And just really appreciate everything that you shared.
Thanks for letting us be on. I appreciate it. Thanks, Michelle, for hanging out with me.
Thanks for hanging out with me, Keith. And thank you, Patty, for asking us.
Oh, you're welcome. And 1 second, I'm going to close the recording.